So before we get to that, let's start with some headlines. The biggest news happened, I believe, Friday as we were driving from Dallas to San Antonio to watch Judson Westlake.
Yeah, we were literally in the car, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, crap, they did it. They actually did it. They actually approved a 12-team college football expansion. That's freaking crazy.
It's such a journalist's nightmare to be in the car, and we were like dead in the middle of our drive too. Like we weren't close to one or the other. For the biggest college football news to drop since the last biggest college football news dropped, because it seems like every 2 weeks there's this like new bombshell that changes the sport completely. But to be kind of in the middle of nowhere, because we're on like the 130 toll road, not to be able to write about it was pretty tough. But
I almost was like, do you like want to just pull off to the side of the road real quick? Like,
I did.
I could like we could do that if you need to do that. Like this is your job. I understand. I can drive if you want. But
it was tough.
No, it was tough.
But for those who haven't heard or need a refresher, the college football playoff is to expand to 12 teams by 2026. That 12 teams will be consisted of the 6 highest ranked conference champions and the 6 highest ranked at-large bids, right, that are determined by the committee. Yeah. So 12 teams total. 4 teams will get a bye. The other 8 teams will play. It sounds like those first-round games will be on campus. So, like, whoever the 5 seed team is, so let's say it's A&M is playing 12 seed LSU. So A&M would have the home game. Okay. And then once we got to the semifinals, that it would be more of a bowl game kind of site that we're used to now with the college football player. I guess the quarterfinals, I'm sorry. So, but I think the biggest news out of this deal isn't just the expanded playoff, which is good because it brings more fan bases involved instead of just having 5, 6, 7 fan bases involved in November, December. Now we're going to have 14, 15, 16, 17 fan bases involved as this thing narrows down. But for me as a G5 grad, as somebody who loves G5 football, one G5 conference champion I say should because who knows what changes over the next 3 or 4 years in terms of what conferences look like and all that kind of stuff. But on paper, 6 conference champions guaranteed a spot means that 5 Power 5 champions will get in, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, Pac-12. But that leaves a spot guaranteed for like the American champion or the Sun Belt champion or probably not, though, the Conference USA
Mountain
champion,
West,
Mountain West, right? So whoever that kind of darling team would be from the G5 ranks gets in there. I think that's big news for places like UTSA, North Texas, SMU, that now you're not shut out from the playoff. There is a route there.
Right. Well, and Pickle and I talked about this a lot on WTF last week, and this was before the expansion actually dropped. The news did on Thursday. We were like, if they were to expand it to at least 12 teams, you have to set some kind of precedent because nobody – I mean, I guess a lot of people aren't going to watch it if there's going to be 6 SEC teams and 6 Big Ten teams. You had to set that precedent to where, you get each Power 5 conference champion in there, and then, of course, you get your low-level G5 conference champion in there, too. But I was like, you've got to at least put that out there because realistically, like, man, no one wants to watch a 6 SEC, 6 Big Ten team.
Right. I think the way it will be, I think it'll still be about half of the teams. I think there'll be like 3 SEC teams, 3 Big Ten teams, conference champions from everywhere else, and then maybe an extra Big 12 team or ACC team or Pac-12 or even a second G5 team, depending on how things break. So, but for me, it keeps the fan base engaged throughout the season. You know, you lose one game early, you don't have to go, oh, well, our season's over. Like Notre Dame, for example. They lose to Ohio State week 1. In the current format, it's kind of done. Right. You're probably out of it, right? Even if you run the table,
that's a good point.
Probably out of it. With the 12-team thing, if you're Notre Dame, you lose that first game, you're still in it. You know, you run the table, you can still get into that 12-team range. And then lastly, I think another big positive will be Texas and Alabama are playing this week. That will future be a conference game. But in general, I think we get to see more of these games.
Yes.
Right? You're not going to be scared to
schedule a hard team first.
Because if you lose, it's not the end of the world. You can go win your conference and you're in a spot, right? If you're Texas Tech, you can go schedule Texas once Texas is in the SEC. And even if you lose that game, if you go win the Big 12, you're going to be one of the 6 highest ranked conference champions. So
exactly.
I think it's good for college football. I'm a big people who listen to this podcast know Ish and I aren't big college football playoff or bust people because it eliminates so many good things about the college game.
Right.
But expanding it to 12, I think is a good solid number. I hope it doesn't get bigger than that.
Right.
And I think we do have to figure out a way to save the bowl structure. But it's a step in the right direction. We knew this was coming. At least there's the 6 conference champions guaranteed a spot. I think that was a really important part.
Right. I was just on my computer when you were saying this, but I don't know if you actually said it. But now that we got the facts out of the way, let's kind of pull our opinions in here. It's not going to change anything, right? This is not basketball. This is not a, hey, look, St. Peter's, 15 seed, upset number 2 Kentucky.
Right. Football's different.
Right.
It's an 85 scholarship game. You got 11 starters on both sides of the ball. You're going to play about 50, 60 guys every single game. There's 200 snaps. Cincinnati made it in last year as a quote-unquote Cinderella G5 team and got housed by Alabama, right?
Yeah, right.
But so do most teams that play Alabama
exactly.
in the semifinals. You know, like Georgia housed Michigan, and Michigan's a Big Ten champion. So there's always going to be blowouts. There's always only 2 or 3 teams that really have a shot by the end of the year to win the championship. UTSA goes undefeated, sneaks into this thing. They're not going to beat Georgia. They're not going to beat Alabama. And if they do, they're not going to pull that same upset again next week and the week after that. So I don't know if it changes who is in the championship game or changes who's in the semifinals, but it does change how your fan base views the college football season.
Right.
And it does change maybe the way recruits view the college football season. Because you no longer just have to go to Ohio State or Alabama or Clemson to play for a championship. You could go to Tech. You could go to TCU. You could go to Notre Dame. You can go to all these different places and find your way into the college football playoff. So maybe that kind of spreads the talent out.
Yeah.
And as the talent is spread out, it's not so much of a obstacle to beat in Alabama. You're closer to them, and it's not as big of an upset. So.
Right, for sure.
All around good news there. I think that's an overwhelmingly positive thing for the game. Something that's not all that positive for the game of football here inside the state. There's a lot of injuries in week 1, specifically at the quarterback position. Texas Tech lost their quarterback, Tyler Shuck, to an injury. We're not sure yet if it's AC joint, if it's a collarbone. They're saying at least 2 weeks, so he's going to miss Houston versus NC State. TCU also lost their starting quarterback. Chandler Morris beat out longtime experienced starter Max Duggan, only to be injured with a sprained knee. He's going to be out at least this week against Tarleton. And then Wiley Green at Rice was injured against USC, may or may not be there for the week 2 game for the Owls. Which one do you think is the most important injury in terms of will make the biggest impact if that guy doesn't get back pretty soon?
Right. I was just about to ask you that same question, but I think it's got to be Rice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Wiley Green looked okay as he could have against that USC team. Still, Rice obviously going into that game probably didn't have a chance of even scoring within that close range with USC. But I think that TJ McMahon just it's just hard. Yeah. I think that's just such a big drop off. I think TCU is obviously in the best position just because they've got that experience coming back at quarterback with Max Duggan in place of Chandler Morris. But, yeah, I think Rice is probably getting the short end of the stick here with – and they just rotate quarterbacks so much. There's just not that much consistency. So they're already struggling so much at that position anyways. And to take off your starting quarterback – they're probably going to be hurting for quite a bit if Wiley Green can't get healthy.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Donovan Smith is a capable quarterback at Texas Tech. They were in a quarterback battle all spring, all summer, all fall. So he's good. He played well in relief duty against Murray State. As we've talked about, Max Duggan started dozens of games. He's played a lot, so he'll be fine there. The drop-off between Wiley Green and TJ McMahon is a big deal. It could be the difference between reaching a bowl game and not reaching a bowl game,
Right.
And so TJ McMahon threw 3 interceptions in his relief duty last week. USC returned 3 Rice interceptions for touchdowns. They got 21 points off of turnovers. Rice is not good enough to make those kind of mistakes. From talking to people around Rice, TJ McMahon has more upside.
Right.
But he makes these mistakes. And if you're Rice, your margin of error is so small, you'd rather take the game manager and see where it falls than take the risk on the upside, but you're going to throw a couple more interceptions.
Right. Well, wide receiver Luke McCaffrey did play a couple snaps last year, right?
Yeah, he played some quarterback last year.
I mean, if this continues to go the way that it does with TJ McMahon at quarterback, do you consider bringing McCaffrey back at quarterback?
That's a great question. I mean, I think McCaffrey's liking the wide receiver thing and thinks that's where his long-term position is going to be. That's where his dad played a decade in the NFL. But, yeah, if you're Mike Bloomgren and this gets to week 3, week 4, and Wiley Green's not back and you're struggling at quarterback, I mean, I think you look into any and all situation. Because if you're Bloomgren, you're coaching for your job this year. This isn't year one where you still have some years to figure it out and all this is unfortunate. You know, for all intents and purposes, this could be it, you know. And so you got to do anything and everything you can to get him back on the field. From what I've heard, they don't think it's going to be a long-term injury. Yeah. But you just never know with that kind of stuff. Right. So hopefully he's back. They play McNeese this week. They should be able to beat him even without a quarterback. And so, like, hopefully they get him back going into the teeth of the schedule. Yeah,
last question before we move on. Out of those 3 quarterbacks, which one do you think is less likely to return?
Tyler Shuck. You know, it sounds like Chandler Morris, you know, if this was a big game, could possibly give it a go. Yeah. You know, they play Tarleton, so why risk it there? Right. You know, Wiley Green, kind of the same thing. It sounds like, you know, they're talking about if he's going to be back this week or next week, not if he's going to be back ever. With Tyler Shuck, if that ends up being a broken collarbone, he's out for the year. That's what he missed the rest of the out. He missed 8 games last year. You know, he only played the first 4 last year before breaking a collarbone. So I think that injury has the biggest potential to linger. It's in his throwing shoulder, I believe. So, you know, even if it's not a broken collarbone, it becomes about pain management. You're going to get hit again. Right. You know, and so I think it's one that can flare up and flare up again. Yeah.